Hello, welcome to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
And we are
the FAIRtax Guys.
Oh, that worked pretty well. I guess we could start, right off the bat here with the big announcement. If people were paying close attention, we didn't say this week's edition of the FAIRtax Guys. We are the FAIRtax Guys 2.0.
Oh, there you go. And what an honor, Bob Paxton, for me to step into Ron Maiellaro's chair, so to speak, virtually. It's a tough position, but I know that's something that he would want to have happen is the show to continue. And I prayed about it and said, well, this is something that needs to be done. And the momentum that you all have built over the past 6 years is important that it continue and that the show continues to bring information to the general public and to the FAIRtax members across the country as we continue on with the FAIRtax Guys radio show every week.
We will do
280. What is the number? It's so high.
This is episode. I think this is episode number 283, if I'm remembering correctly.
It's fantastic.
We've been at it.
Fantastic.
We've been at it for a while, and hopefully we won't need to keep at it in the future. As long as we've been doing it, we can get the FAIRtax pass, and then there will actually be. We will have accomplished our purpose.
And the thing I get when I talk to a lot of people, they say, "Oh, that's a great idea. It's not going to happen." And I said, "Well, why is it not going to happen? Why do you think that?" And they say, "Well, it's just." How hard can you get Congress to do anything about that? I said, well, it's going to be up to us, you, me, and everybody else. And I saw a gentleman over the weekend. I handed him one of the cards and I said, just read it and consider it. And then we have to find people to send to Washington who will support it. And that's how it gets changed. You have to take the steps in order. There's an orderly progression. It just isn't going to wake up one morning and everybody in Washington is going to say, hey, this is a great idea. It's just not going to happen that way.
The Congress critters in Washington are making too much money off the current system. It's going to have to become a losing issue at the ballot box not to support the FAIRtax.
True, very true. When that happens, one district, one precinct, one person at a time.
When we get enough people educated, then that'll happen. But right quickly, before I go too far, I want to thank and recognize everyone that had stepped in and volunteered their assistance to keeping the program going. Of course, Elaine Maiellaro will still remain a close part of the program, even though she will remain behind the scenes. She likes being Miss Producer rather than sitting on the set. But of course, Steve Hayes stepped in for a little while. John Gaver stepped in for a little while. And double thanks to Jade Wally. He stepped in on multiple occasions. And we are going to continue with the quarterly Jade Wally's FAIRtax World here on FAIRtax Power Radio. But he's got a really demanding day job, a young family, and he's working with AFFT on the board as well. So I really didn't want to ask more of him than that. So,
he might have done it, though, if you'd asked. He got probably, the cool thing was your story last week about Jade showing up at Ron's funeral. Phenomenal tribute to how important Ron's contributions over the years to the FAIRtax movement was and still is through those people that he touched throughout the time that he's been involved.
That surprised me no end to walk into the chapel and the first face I recognize is one that lives 2,000 miles away. But all right, you mentioned a minute ago about the Congress critters never getting the FAIRtax pass. My favorite portion of the show is digging into congress.gov. And one thing that we really haven't mentioned on the fact, when I get into this, Ron had no idea what I had found. I mean, his reactions to what I brought up were spontaneous because he was hearing it for the first time. Ditto for Jade. Ditto for you. You don't know what I've dug up here, but I'd like to obviously see your reaction to all this stuff.
Oh, my chin is going to drop 2 or 3 times and eyeballs are going to bug out.
And of course, what we do is
it's almost like the people in Congress every week. They look at what was presented the week before and they go, hey, hold my beer. Let me see if I can outdo that one.
Oh, I tell you what, they come up with some really crazy stuff. And right quickly, what we do, we go to congress.gov, we put the words Internal Revenue Code in quotes into their search function up there at the top of the page. Make sure you've only got legislation in the current Congress selected. And if you do that, as of the day we were recording this, you get 1,234 hits. That was a nice, easy number to remember. And
Wow.
among some of those hits is S 2748, a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to modify the rules for postponing certain deadlines by reason of disaster. And then right under that,
Is that like getting a hall pass at coming late into the high school? Is that what I mean? What the heck is that? Does that mean?
that means that the Internal Revenue Code is going to contain rules for postponing certain deadlines by reason of disaster. And right under that, S 2715, a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to modify the rules for constructive ownership with respect to real estate investment trust. What does the tax code collecting revenue for the government have to do with all this kind of crazy rulemaking?
It's become dysfunctional, Bob. You and I both know this, and half the country probably realizes it, and they just kind of nod their head and go, oh, well, there's nothing we can do about it. But we know there is something we can do about it, and the tax code has just become a platform, a runway for people to make promises without commitments. Mm-hmm. That gets them, curries favor with the lobbyists and their special interests. And
that's the reason.
It's become a big problem. And you pointed out every week here with the congress.gov feature.
That's the reason we do this segment, so people can see what kind of crazy stuff is in the tax code. And the best argument we can make for getting rid of it is showing folks what's in it. Here's another one. S 2721, a bill to require the Internal Revenue Service to issue a report on the tax gap, to establish a fellowship program within the Internal Revenue Service to recruit mid-career tax professionals to create and participate in an audit task force and for other purposes. Key version of that was the IRS to issue a report on the tax gap. When they actually voluntarily, admit that there are taxes that are owed that's not being collected, we got a rotten system in place for doing that.
Yeah. Well, I was watching, always look at the FAIRtax Facebook pages, and the FAIRtax Education for Oklahoma pointed out the production economy equals approximately 100 million earners. Mm-hmm. Taxpayers, tax returns go in, but the consumption economy is 300 million plus. Okay, 100 million for production economy, 300 million for the consumption economy. And you don't have to fool around with the money that's not being collected on the back end. Yeah. And I remember it was you or Jade the last couple of weeks was saying that, hey, guess what? The room that the people that are going to be dealing with at the Social Security office of the FAIRtax is just going to be a small room in the basement, because instead of dealing with 100 million taxpayers and corporations, et cetera, they're going to be dealing with 50 states.
Yeah, that's it.
And the District of Columbia.
FAIRtax will be administered and collected by the state departments of revenue, 45 of which have been dealing with state sales taxes for a long time. They know how to do this. I've been a computer programmer. I know how easy this would be to program into computer software. And all of the complexity and all of the rules for this and the rules for that go away with the FAIRtax, because the Internal Revenue Code is yanked out by the roots, and that's it. They repealed the 16th Amendment, and income taxes become unconstitutional again. Let's scoot on here a little bit.
You got a ton of them. I know. I can tell the stack of papers behind you.
I got a couple more here. This is the Relief for Working Families Act, 2021-22 Relief for Working Families Act. And within that bill, it says to amend the Internal Revenue Code to modify the employer credit for paid family and medical leave and for other purposes. The key word here, if you want to provide relief for working families, get rid of the income tax, get rid of the payroll taxes, pass the FAIRtax, let them bring home their whole paycheck, and get a tax refund every month.
So it's the easiest way to do it. And it simplifies everybody's life, because you mentioned April 15th now, and everybody tenses up and the eyebrows go all over the place, and the eyes bug out and the ears start twitching and everything. But if you stop and think about it, why wouldn't you want the FAIRtax as an alternative to what we're dealing with now? After we listen week after week to congress.gov and the reports of items being proposed, at some level, you have to say, this is ridiculous. let's take a deep breath and figure out how to move things forward. And that's every week right here, we talk about those things. You probably are complaining to your significant other, or, this is just ridiculous that we have to put up with this. And I think that we're probably closer than we've ever been due to the current tax climate in the country, and inflation on the rise, and the recovery in the midst of the pandemic and all that's going on out of Washington, D.C. right now. I think people are probably going to be more tuned in to what are the possibilities going forward. With regard to putting the fair tax on the fast track to kind of cleaning up things, because everybody knows the program's dysfunctional up there, from one side to the other.
Of course, my favorite part of ridiculousness in the tax code is the definition of municipal solid waste. That is never, that somebody's going to have to go a long way to top that one. One more real quick one. This is the Social Security Stabilization and Enhancement Act, HR 5215. In the text there, it refers to amending section 3121 of the Internal Revenue Code. And again, if you want to stabilize and enhance Social Security, fund it properly. Get rid of the payroll taxes. Right now, only the people who are working for a paycheck are paying into the system. With the fair tax, everyone whose spending exceeds their poverty level is supporting Social Security and Medicare. How could you do it any better?
It's a no-brainer, really, when you stop to think about it. I think people's lives right now are just so being distracted by world affairs, and also by things that are going on at the local level with the pandemic winding down, winding up, going sideways throughout the different communities, that folks are sort of like, maybe, well, they're paying a little bit of attention, but then they have other things that they're dealing with too. There's a lot on people's plates right now. And if there was a knight in shining armor on a white horse riding in, this would be the time for the fair tax to be really pushed to the forefront. And again, it goes back to finding the people at the local level who are interested in the same thing you're interested in. Support them, find them, support them, encourage them to run. If they're already running, you need to get out and see them and present the fair tax pledge to them for them to sign, so that they are committing in public to supporting. We know sometimes people get to Washington and they go, well, I think I probably need to, because the bag of sugar has been open for them up there, and they may take a different tack on things. But I think right now, with the climate in the country, both locally, with things that people are dealing with at the family level, and also with things that are going on in the economy, with inflation rising, and the specter of tax increases and things to pay for different programs, I think now is the time for people to really step up their involvement with the Fair Tax organization, becoming involved and making it happen. I think we've got a better chance than any right now.
Well,
that's what people have been saying that for 20 years too.
That's what we're going to do. We're going to try. We've gotten 6 candidates so far that have signed the pledge for the 2022 election cycle. We've interviewed 5 of them. We're working on the other one. And John Gaver says he's got another one in the works. So hopefully we'll have number 7 here before too much longer. But we spent a little more time than usual in the congress.gov sewer this week. But it is so much fun to go in there and see what kind of garbage is in there. But we do need to move on a little bit. I found an article the other day that was just jumped out at me. This was from CNBC. The author is Kate Dore, D-O-R-E. I don't know if that's Dore or Dore, whichever way. It's Kate, D-O-R-E. This was published a couple of weeks ago, Thursday, September the 9th. And it said stimulus payments, which most people thought were a really good idea, are becoming a headache. They have triggered millions of IRS math error notices. And the same may be looming for child tax credit recipients. How about that? Get a stimulus payment and the IRS says you've made math errors.
A math error? What?
That's what it says.
The U.S. Treasury? Are you kidding me?
Oh,
are they using an abacus up there?
Well, I know they're using outdated computers, but the key points of this article said there has been a flood of math error notices from the IRS. Now, I've never gotten one, so I don't really know what it might say. But in 2021, there have been 9 million of these math error notices sent out. 7.4 million of them were due to stimulus payments. Now, that's according to the Taxpayer Advocate Service. If there's a tax balance due, recipients may have a limited time to respond before the collection process begins. A lot of fun that is. And you know how hard it can be to reach the IRS to try to resolve any kind of thing. And the same issues may be looming next year for child tax credit recipients. And that's something that all these financial experts agree on. Don't we have a wonderful system in place for funding the government if this kind of stuff happens?
Well, it is. It just underscores every time you read about things like this, you think, how come we're letting this happen? This is our government that's out there doing this. First of all, math errors, but second, the thing you said a minute ago, recipients may have a limited time to respond before the collections process begins. What are they going to start penalizing you for something that they are responsible for in the error of calculation? Is that what they're saying there?
Yes, I think so.
Well, excuse me, let me go ahead and mail my check in right now.
They are the IRS. They can do whatever they want to.
Yeah, and it's gotten out of control. It's totally out of control. And one hand doesn't really know what the other's doing. And you talk to any tax professional and they'll, tell you they have a hard time keeping up with it. And we know that people are, calling the Internal Revenue Service for various things, and it's hard for them to keep up just on the phone. And are you going to pay a tax lawyer to sit on the phone for 2 hours to solve an IRS problem for you? Just ditch the Internal Revenue Service. Get rid of the 16th Amendment and get rid of April 15th as a day to pay taxes and enact a comprehensive, very simple plan, the FAIRtax, that allows you to pay your taxes when you want to at the cash register, and it's going to be revenue neutral, and eventually, from a competition standpoint, all of the taxes that are embedded in each product that we buy are going to drop away, and we'll end up paying about the same, if not less, over the course of time. If you're a millionaire, you're going to be paying more because you'll probably be spending gas money on that yacht that you have and helicopter that you might have to get to the yacht and that kind of thing. But us little guys, we're going to end up coming out pretty good with regard to what our tax burden will be on a regular basis. And if we can learn to save, if people can put some of that money away, that becomes extra money that you don't pay taxes on ever. You pass it on in your will to your kids, grandkids, etc. And it's super, super easy. But the question is, how do you break that wall of resistance with the government, with the people that are supposedly our representatives that get up there and basically, literally in some cases, put chain link fences around them, so the public is not able to get to them, to watch the wheels of our government turn.
Yeah, well, this article quotes a financial planner named Larry Harris in Asheville, North Carolina. This is a rather profound quote. "Just resolving the problem is a massive problem in itself."
Yeah, that's right.
Now, how's that?
I appreciate Larry's comments on there.
Yeah, wonder if Laura McHugh knows him. Laura's in Asheville.
I bet she does.
Yeah, considering the business she's in, and the same city. But says this article also says, as of August 27th, a little less than a month ago, there was a backlog of 9.2 million unprocessed individual returns, including 2020 filings with errors. So if the IRS thinks your return has an error in it, they're not going to send you your refund. And now they think you've got all.
They move it over to stack number 2. They move it over somewhere down in the building down the hall, or office down the hall. Dan Heron from San Luis Obispo, California-based CFP and CPA with a company out there, was quoted in this article as saying one of the biggest issues we're having is the reconciliation of stimulus payments. So you got the printer over here on this side of the IRS Treasury building, and then you go swing over here and you got the collection side over here. Do they not know from one side of the building to the other how much money they've sent out to people over the last 18 months or so in the form of stimulus payments?
When they send thousands of refunds to the same address and don't realize it?
Yeah, I've never had that. I've never lived at that address.
I haven't either. That's terrible. But this kind of ties into something that Steve Hayes mentioned in a chairman's report a few weeks ago. There is a proposal to upgrade the computer systems at the IRS and allow the IRS to prepare your tax return for you.
Hey,
you heard that, didn't you?
Big thumbs up there. I trust them. Yeah. Right.
Absolutely. But the problem is, you get a problem like this, the IRS sends you a notice that your return has errors in it. We're not going to give you your refund. And it can take hours and hours and hours. You pitched on it earlier. To even get through to somebody on the phone, and then there's no guarantee that the person you get through to has any clue how to resolve your problem.
Well, 160, is that right? There's no dot in there in this number. IRS received more than 167 million phone calls during the 2021 filing season.
And the rest
only
of the story,
7% of taxpayers reached an agent.
7% of 167 million people were able to get through to the IRS. We need to get rid of the system. The system stinks.
And it comes down to that. And, we spend every show, you and Ron and everyone who's been a guest over the years, and the guests that you all interview from time to time all say the same thing. And the bottom line is, the guy that can walk into my office and tell me, this is the thing that you can do that will change the politicians' minds. And quite simply, I mean, that guy is he's the guy that's going to retire. He's the guy that's going to retire rich, because quite frankly, it's very simple. But because you're dealing with the politics of all of it, and the embedded dysfunction in Washington from one side of the Capitol to the other, to all of the buildings. And we know that there is some benefit there to our federal government. And I think if you get back to, the simple parts of what our government is supposed to do for us, they're not supposed to be beating us up. We're not supposed to feel like criminals, guilty before you're proven innocent with the U.S. Treasury and the Internal Revenue Service when they come to audit you, or just the draconian measures that they take to collect in some cases. We have to begin to think about those people that we can send to Washington that can be continue to be vocal about this particular function, the collection of revenue to keep the government going. And we know that there has to be an equal amount of money collected through the consumption tax presented by the FAIRtax, as is being collected under the current income tax. We know that has to be an equal number. So that's not the argument. The argument is the political part of it, who scratches whose back in Washington, and allows our money to be used for their benefit as opposed to for ours.
All right, we got to scoot. Time's getting away from us.
Yeah.
Don't you just love the last sentence in this article? The IRS did not immediately respond to a request for comment.
Yeah, because they were too busy answering consumer calls for help.
So again, if you can go to CNBC's website, look up this article on Thursday, September 9th by Kate Dorr, you can see what we're talking about. We just kind of hit the highlights. But before we run completely out of time, I want to mention one more time something that we've hit on in the past here. Really could be a game changer for the FAIRtax movement. And that, again, is the FAIRtax marketplace.
Absolutely.
You have heard about that, I assume.
Oh, absolutely. FAIRtaxmarketplace.com.
Correct.
It's a community that is being built. So if you're out there listening and you have a product that you can sell maybe and ship across the country, or you have a service in your local community, you could actually build a marketplace in your community around what you're doing and gather other people to come and be a part of it from a standpoint of commerce. A portion of the sale from whatever you're selling would go to the FAIRtax organization, so that so we can continue to put out information. But you get on there and you've got I don't know, a tie-dyed T-shirt company, or you are selling dance shoes or flip-flops, or you're selling flying discs that dogs have an easy time catching. Just think about the possibilities there.
Yeah, well, the benefit
and it has to start in the local community. So if you're listening or watching, you need to make sure that you think about this. Go to the site and get creative and think about how you can utilize that in advancing your business, and it'll help everybody.
Yeah, one of the benefits to the vendors is that there's a database. Americans for Fair Taxation has a database of almost 400,000 people. And if you join up, and we send out an email blast and tells 400,000 people across the country, hey, this business is now listed on the FAIRtax marketplace. I mean, it's a win to be introduced to that many companies at the same time. And of course, people like you and I who support the FAIRtax and would rather deal with a like-minded business than to buy something from Amazon, for example, can go out there to this FAIRtax marketplace, know that when we are buying the things that we're going to buy anyway, that a portion of what we're spending is going to go to support the FAIRtax movement. And that's going to be just a great win-win for everybody when we can get enough vendors there to make it a viable place and have enough buyers knowing about it. There's going to be 400,000 already that know about it to actually start shopping there.
I love it. This is what a great idea. And if you're going to buy something, and again, once the marketplace is populated with stores, it would be an easy switch to do that. A lot of people are buying services and products online now, where 18 months ago they go out to the store to buy a T-shirt.
Yep.
Now they're thinking, well, I'll just save the time. And so
we have run slap out of time here. Time flies when we're having fun. So we're going to wrap up this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
The FAIRtax Guys reminding you, as always, that the FAIRtax is the only truly fair tax. And once you understand it,
you will demand it.
So tell me, how could I pay less taxes?
Less?
Yeah, I'm trying to get ahead. So how can I pay less?
Well, I suppose you could pay less taxes by earning less money, or you could give to charity.
How is that going to help?
Actually, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but if you know the right people, okay, or if you have a really good lawyer, you can usually get around the big ones.
If I may, under the FAIRtax, to pay less taxes, you would simply consume less. You would control how much you pay and when you pay your taxes simply by choosing what you purchase and when you purchase something.
So I could stay focused and get ahead.
Exactly.